is Becky Gannon, and I'm mad about miniatures. Today, my guest is Marina, a talented miniaturist who, among other things, recently did a big mini project for pop star Meghan Trainor. Marina is on Instagram at Deck to Farm Charm. Let's go talk to Marina. Hello, Marina. I'm so glad to have you on the show.
Hi, Becky. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I can't wait to talk to you. I last saw you at the Philly show. That was so much fun. And I know that there are no shows during the holidays and stuff. I'm kind of missing all my mini friends.
I know. I'm having so much FOMO right now. So I signed up for the Vegas show just to get back into the groove of the shows.
Oh, that's fun. And I understand that as we're talking, you're multitasking. Are you stuffing pillows right now?
Yes, I am. I am always either stuffing pillows or folding blankets or fraying carpets. That's like my go-to.
Well, I'm not surprised because I've known you for a while, but as I was like really digging deep down into your Instagram, one thing I noticed is you're very prolific. You've done so many shows, you've done so many custom houses, you have workshops, you have a full complement of stuff in your shop. You're always busy, right?
I can't sit still. And this hobby has so many like little different avenues of making things that I just keep dipping my toes in literally every single category just to see what I like the most.
So there's always something you can do with you have a spare moment.
Yes, there are no spare moments. It's always dollhousing.
It's all dollhouse all the time.
Yep.
So you just did a dollhouse for Meghan Trainor.
Yes, that was one of my highlights for the holiday season.
I bet. So how did that come about?
Last year, one of my friends, Tiffany, went to her concert and she had front row tickets. So she was like, why don't you make her a little room box and I will take it to the show and try to hand it off to her. We kept like putting it off. And then like finally end of the summer, she was like, Marina, you have to do this. Like she's gonna love it. So finally I made myself hunker down and I built her this little room box that was basically a time capsule of her album. So she just released her album Timeless. I basically stalked her life. I found a bunch of pictures of her family. I printed out little like things. I did her costume that she was wearing on tour. And then I made her like a little dressing room situation. So she ended up giving it to Megan's brother, who was walking around the stage before the show started. He gave it to Megan, and Megan was like obsessed with it.
What? That's great.
I know. So she posted it like on her stories. She like mentioned my name and she was so in love with the little details and stuff. And then kind of nothing happened for a while. And then around December, no, actually it was right before Thanksgiving. Someone reached out from her management team and they were like, hey, Megan hasn't stopped talking about this little thing you did. So we want to surprise her with a Christmas gift of all of her albums. So they were kind of like, we can make like a dollhouse for her and make every room a different album. Or because there was like a pretty serious time crunch, I suggested making a room box for every single album. We ended up going with that scenario. She has 6 albums out right now, and I did like a little time capsule for every single album.
That's amazing. Did you really only have 10 days to do it?
Yeah. They reached out 2 days before Thanksgiving. And then by the time we signed all the contracts and they got all the clearances from all the managers and for, budgets and stuff, they literally had me, I think it was 10 days to work and then like 2 days for shipping.
Oh my God. So you didn't sleep for like 10 days?
Yeah. And my husband, bless him, he took on the mom role for a while too. So he was with the kids and I was just in my office, just crunching away. But I got it done. I had a bunch of friends here who were helping me paint and stain and all the things. It was a team effort, but got it done.
That's great. So that's just a little more than one day, like 1.5 days per room box.
Yeah, basically.
Tell me about some of the details that you put in that you're most proud of or that were the most fun.
So I think they mostly wanted like memorabilia in there, and they wanted a lot of pictures and stuff of the people that actually she works with. There's a lot of like family that's involved in her tours. It was a lot of creating little picture frames and collages. I went through a lot of her music videos and pulled like props from that. Yeah, and then like a lot of engraving. So some of them I engraved the song titles from the tracks. One of them was a little Grammy that Preston from the Bearded Miniaturist, he actually made that for me. So that was in her very first album, all about that bass. Yeah, there was a lot of teeny tiny things that got made that were specifically for her. It was just a lot of fun. It was definitely something that was out of my comfort zone. You know me, I'm all keep everything white and shiplap, and this was very, very bright and colorful, but it was a lot of fun.
Well, yes, it was very different, but and I think you did an amazing job. And one thing that struck me is sometimes, you had so many pictures and so many little things, and sometimes it's hard to like get a cohesive look with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you use color so well. Each
Yeah.
one was a different sort of bright color and everything.
Yeah. So I kind of based it off of her album covers. That's how I kind of did all of this, the background colors. And then I did like a black satin shadow box to kind of bring everything together so she could like stack it as like a tall building type of a thing.
That's great. And did you hear back that she loved it?
Yes, she opened it like 2 days before Christmas. She opened it on her birthday, which is December 22nd. So I think it was a combined gift for Christmas and her birthday. I heard amazing things. I'm supposed to get pictures when she has it all set up in her house.
That's amazing. Okay, so
Yeah.
tell me, when you were painting it like some of those bright colors, did you have like a little moment where you were like reaching for the cream paint?
Yeah, color gives me so much anxiety, especially because, my office is completely white and gray. So it was sticking out like a sore thumb.
It's funny because both you and I, we have very different color schemes, but we're both very committed to
Yes.
the colors that we love.
Yeah. But did you see my teal room?
But yes, I did see the teal room. When I was looking through, I was like, wait, Marina did this? But it's so colorful. And, usually it's cream and shiplap
Yeah.
and a little black, just to spice things up. One post that made me crack up is when you did and I mean this in the nicest way, when you did a kitchen that was like a light rosemary green.
Uh-huh.
And you were like, I'm doing a color instead of white.
Yeah.
And I just cracked up because, if I did a green kitchen, it'd be Kelly green.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny? One of my first big clients, the Bucket List family, they had the brightest neon green kitchen. It was like designed on HGTV. So it was all done very professionally and I had to replicate it. But it was like, oh, this color green. First of all, there's a funny story. When I was building it, I ended up spilling this can of paint on my tile in the kitchen, and there's still this green in the grout haunting me
No.
to this day. Yes.
Well, back up for a minute and tell us about the Bucket family and give us a little context.
So that was one of my first big projects. So the Bucket List family is this family that I think the husband designed the software recognition software for Snapchat, I believe. And he sold that for like $50 million, something crazy like that. And then they used that money to start traveling the world. And now they live in Hawaii and they do like all this crazy stuff for the National Geographic. The wife wrote a book, and then they have 3 little kids that travel all over the world. So they found me through one of my reels that went viral, and they asked me to recreate like a replica of their house in Hawaii. And that was sort of my like very first big project that I did. It definitely gave me a huge boost in followers. And I think that's when people kind of started to notice me and ask for a lot of like the custom projects.
That's funny, though, that one of your first ones was all these bright colors.
Yes. So like the exterior of the house was like hunter green. There was a lot of like mustard yellow in there and this bright green kitchen. There was a lot of colors. It was a very like eclectic Moroccan vibe, I guess.
Well, it's in Hawaii.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It might have been pretty subdued for Hawaii, out for all we know.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. But it was designed by, who was it? There was a HGTV show, Meredith and something, but they designed it for them and then it got like featured on HGTV.
Oh, that's nice. So they're the bucket list family because now that they have all this money, they're doing everything on their bucket list.
Yes, basically. But I
Okay.
mean, they're recording everything. They have, I don't even know, like 3 or 4 million followers. They're just living their best life, recording everything, and they have like these crazy sponsorships. I think they're creating a movie with Disney now based off of their story. It's a really cool family.
So a lot of times I ask people if their real life house and their mini decor are similar or different, and a lot of times it's different. But I already know the answer here because I've seen pictures of your real house and your real house and your dollhouse. I would say sometimes it's hard to tell which is which.
Yeah. I love home decorating, and my husband's getting sick of moving. So now I need a new creative outlet. This is definitely scratching my itch for sure. So we flipped 3 houses like before this one. Obviously, it was a little easier because we only had one kid at the time. But now that we're kind of established in this neighborhood, we really love it. And he's sick of packing things up and moving and renovating and doing all the demos. So when I found this hobby during the pandemic, it just all kind of fell into place.
So now you flip houses again, but they're mini houses.
Just mini houses, yeah. And the budget is much more friendly. There's a lot less headaches. There's no contractors. There's no permits that you need to wait on.
That's funny. That's part of what I love about it too. I just love interior design and I love that you don't have to worry about living with it either.
Yeah.
You can just do it
Yeah.
and see how it looks and see how it feels. It's great. So I also started in the pandemic. Tell me a little bit about your journey.
I was working at the hospital. We were doing like crazy shifts. Everyone else was home. I think my husband was working from home for the first like 2 weeks. And we were just so bored. Like we went through a couple jigsaw puzzles and then we finished those and the pandemic was still happening. So then I randomly like saw this dollhouse on Marketplace and it was like this ugly blue color. And I was like, God, that would look so pretty if it was white. So I just randomly bought it just to like seriously just to paint it white. I didn't even think of it. And then when I brought it home, my daughter was like, "Oh my God, a dollhouse for me." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess it could be for you." So we started.
How old is your daughter?
I guess she was like 5 or 6 at the time.
Okay, that's funny because so many times people tell me it all started with the dollhouse for their kid and then they took it
Yeah.
over. But
Yeah, yeah,
yours
yeah.
is a little different.
She helped me a lot in the beginning. She helped me paint, and then she kind of got bored with it. But then I started getting really into it. She was definitely decorating it like it's supposed to be pink and colorful. And then I was like, no, 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 let's try gray. Like, let's try white. And we did all the shiplap. And then I put up a couple videos on my home decor account, and it just started getting so much engagement. I was really struggling with my home decor account because, there's a gazillion of them. And then when I started putting up stuff about the dollhouse, people just got really into it. And so it kind of became a thing without any intention.
It's so funny because that's kind of how I got into it too. I had a social media business and you kept working as medical technician. Is that right?
Technologist, yeah.
Technologist. But I had this big kind of event business and of course that went away. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what am I going to do all day? And it just kind of popped into my mind, just like it did you. And then who knew that years later we'd still be talking about it?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's great that it took off so well.
Yeah. And it's funny because you always hear, like, you have to find your niche. It's so hard to do that. But, like, once you find something that you're really passionate about, that's when you discover, like, your true talents.
Yes, I think that's true. So another project that I saw on your Instagram, did you make a tiny little house to put on Zillow, like an elf house?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So that was a couple of years ago. That was so random. So my friend Christine from Paper Doll Miniatures, she actually referred me to this client. I think she had a bunch on her plate and she was like, "Hey, I don't really have any houses, but they want like 5 doll houses and it just seems like a crazy amount." So I started talking to them and I showed them kind of my inventory. And at the time, I think I had 4 or 5 random houses sitting around. And they were like, "Well, we could kind of do this, but we're really thinking more Icelandic elf houses." And I was like, "Huh, well, that's weird. I don't have anything like that, but I guess I could just whip it up from scratch."
I don't even really know what that is.
No, I definitely had to Google it. It's those little houses that grow in the hills and
Oh,
they kind of have like moss on top of them. They're like these folklore houses that,
like kind of like little fairy houses.
yeah, kind of like fairy houses. They're pretty popular in Iceland.
Okay.
So the company that reached out was Icelandic Provisions, and they had a deal with Zillow that they were going to auction off these houses for a giveaway.
Okay.
So I had to create 5 elf houses, 4 of which went to like social media outlets and news broadcasts. And then one got listed on Zillow. And I guess the kicker of it was like a house you can actually afford because everything was so expensive during the pandemic. We ended up creating these little magical houses that had the Icelandic Provisions yogurts in the fridge. And then I ended up going to New York. We did like a whole photo shoot situation for the dollhouse. The pictures were incredible. And again, like the house itself was very eclectic, very whimsical, very colorful, but somehow it all just comes together when you start to put all these little details in. They were very much hands on. I didn't have as much creative freedom on it. So there was a lot of back and forth between, like the clients and the production team. It was very, very structured. And that was one of my first experiences working with like a huge company that has to get approvals for everything. It was very hard just because I've never done anything like that. Everything else has been more creative freedom.
Hmm.
So I got to experience what it's like working with corporate companies and I learned a lot. Luckily, that was a much better timeline. I think I had the whole summer to make 5 houses.
5 houses from scratch is quite a few.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first house was very hard just to create the file and get everything to fit properly. But then afterwards, it was just basically copy and paste.
So you've made a ton of custom doll houses, right? Did I read like, was it 20,
Yeah.
30?
I think I'm up to like 23 now.
That's amazing. And that includes like furnishing and everything, correct?
Yeah, I usually only sell them furnished.
How long does it take you to do one?
I mean, I guess it depends on the client. Some people are way more lenient. If you're working with big companies or celebrities, then they want it like done yesterday. So it all depends. Honestly, a lot of them have been for like newborn kids that they just want to be on display. So people have just asked, like, they're not going to play with it. It's just going to be in like a big plexiglass box and it's just going to be on display. So I was like, okay.
Do they get to play with it when they're older?
I guess, yeah. I just remember a couple of them were like, "Oh, well, she was just born." And I was like, "Oh, well, there's a lot of tiny little pieces in here, so I would be careful."
It's kind of like they're just excited. It's like
Yeah.
a decor,
Yeah.
something to grow into.
I guess like a little memorabilia piece.
That's so many houses. I mean,
Yeah.
again, you must just work on it all the time.
I mean, I've definitely cut back now that I've started traveling to do more shows. But the
Hmm.
first year or two, I probably did 5 houses a year, I would say.
So when did you quit your job and become a full-time miniaturist?
I think it was 2021. My hospital actually ended up closing like a year after the pandemic, and I was working part time, so it wasn't like a huge jump.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to go back to a trauma hospital, which is where I started. I got used to working at like a little hospital that was very low key. And I already started my dollhouse business kind of on the side, like I was doing my Etsy. And I don't think I started doing the shows yet, but I just figured if I can grow my Etsy a little bit, I will basically be making the same amount as I was at the hospital. After the first year, I think I surpassed my hospital part-time salaries. So all we had to worry about was health insurance. After that, everything kind of luckily fell into place.
Oh, that's awesome. I asked because I think it's hard. So many people, they want to do it full time,
Yeah.
but I think it can be very difficult to actually do that and money at it.
It was definitely hard to start out. I mean, I did it for at least a year while I was working at the hospital. So I kind of built up my clientele on
Hmm.
Etsy. And this is my second Etsy shop. Before this, I was making baby clothes. That was pretty successful, but then I just kind of got sick of sewing. I found this, somehow managed to turn it into a full-time job.
Well, one post I thought was hilarious. You were talking about going full time, but you
Yeah.
said when your hobby becomes your job,
Yeah.
it's a jobby.
Jobbing it.
And it sounds like that's kind of what it is
Yeah.
because you're stuffing pillows while we
Yeah.
talk. You're, making furniture when you watch TV. You're kind of always doing it.
Honestly, like I sit in my office probably 10, 12 hours a day. It doesn't feel like it. I'm honestly just crafting. I mean, sure, some days are more tedious than others if I'm filling like the same Etsy orders, but most of the time it's just keeping my hands busy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not stressful. It's just fun.
That's wonderful. So what are some of the keys? You sell online. You also do a lot of shows. You do video workshops, right?
Yeah, so the virtual workshops is something I started last year. My first workshop was at the Philly show, and I did how to use a Glowforge. I actually brought in the Glowforge. I showed people how to laser cut, how to briefly design files, and basically just getting started with a laser cutter because I think it's one of the most essential tools, especially if you want to start a business. And I mean, I got so much great feedback from the people that took the workshop. When I was advertising it before the Philly show, people were like, oh, I wish this was online. And I was like, well, I guess it could be online. I did a bunch of research. I found the platform that helps me organize everything. It's been really successful. I mean, I only do it a couple times a month, but it's awesome. It's usually like 10 people who sign up for an hour. It's super quick, super easy. It's so convenient for people who are working. They can watch it whenever.
I love that you focus on the tools too, because there are a lot of women who are really good at the tools,
Yeah.
but there are also a lot of people like me who grew up not being taught how to use tools.
I started with the basic miter box and X-Acto knives, and I had a Cricut maker, and all of that was useful at first. But if you're making large quantities of something, you can't sustain that without getting the proper equipment.
Right. You can't make 20 dollhouses with an X-Acto knife, right? So is that, you think, your most essential tool that you use the most?
Probably, yeah.
You still do some sewing, mini pillows, lots of blankets and bedding and things like that. One thing I thought was really interesting when we were in Philly is, I went to Philly. Let's see, what's the first Philly show after COVID? Was that 20?
It must have been 2020, 21.
That's what I think. I had just started my podcast. I was just getting to know people in the mini community. And it was very exciting because it was the first show where where everyone could meet. As I was walking around Philly this fall, I really noticed a difference. Like the little businesses like you really look like little businesses now. You have your own packaging. You have like little sets and they're all packaged up beautifully, I might say.
Thank you.
Yes, they really are beautiful. So do you think that as you've grown in your business, you've gotten better at that type of thing too?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always been all about the aesthetics of it, but now I definitely treat it more like as a little pop-up shop. And I think from walking around the Philly show the first year, the first thing I think I noticed was people's display setup. And if the setup wasn't cohesive or like properly lit, I wouldn't really look twice at it. So I think that's really important to kind of stand out from the crowd and make your table pop to make sure you're attracting a lot of clients.
You have a beautiful, beautiful display, which you said your hubby made in like a couple of days.
Yeah, yeah, he is very handy. So I just come up with some ideas and he goes to Home Depot the next day and it's as good as done.
That's amazing.
And I think a lot of people have definitely stepped up their game with as far as displays, and there's so many more options. So every year I try to make something a little more different to stand out.
Yeah, I just really noticed the displays, yours and other people's too. I just feel like it's sort of interesting kind of seeing how things have progressed since 2021.
Yeah. You got to get with the times, I guess, if you want to keep evolving.
So one thing I've become obsessed by when I was looking over and over again at your Instagram page was how all your dollhouses revolve.
I do get a lot of comments about that.
So, did you build your own Lazy Susan or did you just order it? Tell me how I can get my dollhouses to revolve.
Okay, so my very favorite one is like 3 feet wide. And I actually ended up getting it off Facebook Marketplace, and it came with one of these huge dollhouses that was sitting on it. It looks like it was handmade in the 50s. There's a bunch on Amazon that you can get, and they're just like black, grippy, textured ones. So I've been using those for a bunch of my like little cottages. If you want something bigger, they sell these kits at Home Depot that you can actually make yourself. So you can buy a big like platform circle that you can attach the Lazy Susan like mechanism thing under it and build it
Oh,
yourself. Yeah.
and your Lazy Susan must be electric, right? You don't spin it.
No, no, no. It's not electric. I usually hide behind the counter and I spin it myself.
Oh, here I was thinking it was electric.
No.
You're crouched behind
Oh,
spinning it,
yeah. I'm always crouched behind and I'm spinning.
but it's at such a steady rate.
I know. Sometimes I feel like I have tremors and you can really see it like in the video. So I have to film it a couple of times, but there's definitely a technique to it. But
Okay.
usually like my thighs are burning by the time I'm done videoing.
I love that exercise while
Yeah.
doing Instagram. Well, I don't think people realize sometimes how many times we have to reshoot those reels.
Oh yeah, it takes forever. And it's usually like you have to wait for the perfect timing. You have to make sure there's no snow on my skylight. There's a lot of factors that go into a good content.
So that's so interesting. I was sure they were electric. I actually did order something on Amazon. It'll be interesting to see if it's good enough. But I'm gonna have to practice being as
Yeah.
constant with that.
So what I do is I rest my hand on like whatever table surface it's sitting on, and then you keep it rested and you're just moving like your wrist at a very steady pace. Lots of practice.
Oh, that's so interesting. Look at all the tips I'm getting.
Yeah.
So you were also on Good Morning America.
Yeah, that was last year, I think.
Yeah. So tell us about that. That's so
They found
exciting.
one of my videos and they reached out. It looks like they did like a couple dollhouse things before. I think Tiny House Halls was on it a couple years ago. So I think there's just someone in Good Morning America who likes miniatures. They were really fascinated with how I got started and how my Instagram's growing. And it was a really cool interview.
And did you do like a little tour
I
of
think
your
I
house?
showed him everything that was in my office at the time. So I think I had my gray house and then I had my little shop in there. But I kind of just showed him like the little kits that I make and kitchens. They were blown away by the size of these little furniture pieces that looked like they were from Pottery Barn.
Yes, you're a big Pottery
Oh,
Barn
huge
fan.
fan, huge fan. That's one of my dream goals is to work with them.
So Pottery Barn, if you're
Yes,
out there.
and listening. Or Joanna Gaines. That's another one.
Oh, Joanna
Yeah.
Gaines, that would be another good one for you. So one thing when I see pictures of your office, which you show pretty frequently, I have to ask you, is it really that neat all the time? Because I
For
am
the
blown
most part,
away.
unless I'm like getting ready for a show, then it's like chaos. Like when I was doing the Megan Trainor project, my anxiety was through the roof. It was so much colorful stuff and then lots of glitter and lots of ribbons. So it depends on the project, but usually I'm really good at organizing. So all of my inventory is like in little pots and pans and drawers.
So what about color and glitter makes you anxious? That's so interesting because for me, my favorite color teal and my other favorite color sparkle
Sparkle.
relaxes me. Yes, that's a
I
color
think just because
sparkle.
it sticks out so much in my home decor. So if it's, a red room against my white cabinets, it just freaks me out. And it's funny because my first condo, you would have thought it was a rainbow house. I had a yellow laundry room next to a coral kitchen backsplash, next to a Tiffany blue bathroom. My bedroom was like navy blue. It was every shade of color, and it was a very tiny condo. And from the living room, you could see every single color from the hallway.
And did you pick
Yes,
those
I picked them.
colors?
I painted them myself. I thought they were fantastic. I thought I was like the next Joanna Gaines. I don't know what I was thinking. I cringe every time I look at those pictures. And then I think, honestly, it got very white when we moved into this house because we have wood ceilings. It's already a lot. So you have to kind of tone down the walls and the decor to, accentuate the beauty of the ceilings here.
I do have a tip for you. If you use one color, it sticks out. But if you use all
Yeah.
the colors, it
Yeah.
doesn't so much. I would have thought you were always an
No,
all
I
white
definitely
girl.
went through my phase of, lots of yellows. Tiffany blue used to be my favorite color. I used to be obsessed with Tiffany and Company. I definitely went through a lot of phases.
Well, part of what I love about doing the houses is, if you went through that many phases in your real life decor, you'd
Yeah.
probably be divorced and
All the
broke.
above.
But I think your tastes evolve
Yeah.
faster because you can just act out the trend and be like, I don't like
Yeah.
that. And one of the things I thought was interesting is I thought when I made a dollhouse, I would never change it. And I've already redone
Yes.
dollhouses I made not that long ago.
I totally agree. Because even like my first dollhouse, I thought it was so magical. And then like a year of looking at it, I was like, oh my God, like, why did I do this? Or I think I probably started remaking furniture once I got a laser. And then once you replace the furniture, you're like, oh my God, I messed up the shiplap here. So you just, one thing leads to another, and then you end up ripping down the whole house and starting from scratch.
I still like the wallpaper colors I chose for my first house, but I was filming it yesterday and I was like, wow, I really did a bad job putting this up. At some point, I'm going to have to put it up so it doesn't look like a crazed toddler
As
did
soon
it.
as I notice like any imperfections in a dollhouse that like to everyone else would be like no big deal, I start to like panic and I'm like, all right, I need to sell this house. Like I can't keep looking at this mistake ever again. So
Oh, that's funny. I know I tore out my first kitchen and I kind of wish I hadn't now.
I will say I wish I like kept my first dollhouse just to like as a memory thing. Like I do get sad about some of the ones that I sold.
Oh, I can see
Yeah.
that because you put so
Yeah.
much love and care and your personality and a few cat
Yeah.
hairs.
Definitely some cat hairs, but
So it's been so great having you on the show, Marina. I'm so glad we got to do this. I always see you at the shows and we talk. Your display is always like such a
aw,
showstopper. Like I think everyone walks down the aisle and is like, "Oh, what's
yeah.
this?"
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad we finally did this. I feel like it's a rite of passage for, the mini world. You have to be on the podcast.
Oh, well, that makes me really happy.
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you're big miniaturist, just remember when I call you, you got to
You
do
got to
it.
do it. Exactly.
It's exciting to hear about all your projects, both past and current. And remember, you can see Marina pretty easily because she's going to be at pretty much every
Every
dollhouse I can
dollar
think
show.
of.
Yeah.
Every dollhouse show that I can think of. Well, thanks again,
Thanks,
Marina.
Becky.
It's been a pleasure talking to
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
That was so fun. I really enjoyed talking to Marina about her miniatures, and I hope you did too. If you like the podcast, please consider commenting on one of my Instagram posts at Mad About Miniatures or leaving a review where you listen to your podcast. I really enjoy hearing from you, and it helps the podcast grow. Till next time, remember, there are no rules in your dollhouse but the ones you create for yourself. Goodbye.